I have walked the mountain paths of this country for 30 years. I have slept in temples where the roof beams sagged with rot, and in fields where the only shelter was the sky. I thought I knew every face that loneliness could wear. I was wrong. It was the 7th year of my pilgrimage. I had crossed into a province I did not recognize, following a trail that wound upward through cedar forests. So dense the afternoon, light fell in thin. Grey threads, my sandals were worn through. My rice was gone, and the path did not want to end. Near dusk, I found a village. Small, perhaps 20 houses clustered around a single temple, whose bell had gone green with age. Smoke rose from 2 chimneys. A dog watched me from beneath a cart, but did not bark. The silence was the kind that presses against your ears. An old man met me at the edge of the village. He wore a monk's robe, threadbare but clean, and his face was the kindest I had seen in weeks. Deep lines around his eyes, a smile that arrived before his words. "You are far from the main road, brother," he said. "The mountains are not kind to strangers after dark." I bowed. I told him I was a traveling monk, that I needed only a place to rest for the night, and perhaps a bowl of water. He nodded slowly. Then his expression changed, not unkindly, but with a weight I did not understand. "There has been a death in the village," he said. "An old woman. She passed 3 days ago." He paused. "Tonight, the people will leave. It is our custom. When someone dies, every living soul leaves the village until dawn." I asked him why. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "The dead must be left alone. That is all I will say." I should have left with them. Every instinct I had owned over 30 years of wandering told me to follow the villagers into the valley below and not look back. But I am a monk, and the dead deserve prayers, not abandonment. The village emptied before the last light left the sky. Families filed down the path in single file, carrying nothing, speaking nothing. A woman with an infant, pressed against her chest, glanced at me as she passed. Her eyes held something I had seen only once before, in the face of a condemned man. Then I was alone. The temple was small and bare, a wooden altar, a single candle already lit, as though someone had known I would stay. The corpse lay on a straw mat in the adjoining room, wrapped in white cloth. I could see the shape of her through the open doorway. Small, still, her hands folded over her chest. I knelt before the altar. I began to chant. The sutras came easily, the way breath comes, without thought, without effort. The candle flame stood perfectly straight in the windless air. I do not know how long I had been praying when I heard it. A sound from the next room, wet, soft, like cloth being pulled slowly from a body. My chanting did not stop. My hands did not move from their position. But my eyes opened. Something was in the room with the dead. I could not see it clearly. The doorway framed only darkness and the edge of the straw mat. But I could hear it. The sound of tearing, of something being pulled apart, of wet, deliberate chewing. I forced myself to turn. Slowly. The candlelight reached only a few feet into the adjoining room, but it was enough. A figure, shapeless is the only word I have, though that is not quite right. It had the suggestion of a body, hunched, broad, shouldered, something almost human in its posture. But its edges were wrong, blurred, as though it existed only partially in the world of form. It was crouched over the corpse. The white cloth had been peeled back, and it was eating, not devouring, eating, the way a man eats when he is very tired and very hungry, and has done this 1,000 times before. I watched it tear a piece of flesh from the dead woman's arm. I watched it lift that flesh to where a mouth should be. I watched it chew, slowly, methodically. Without pleasure, that was the worst part. There was no pleasure in it, no relish, no hunger made beautiful by satisfaction. Only the mechanical rhythm of a creature performing a task it cannot stop performing. I prayed louder. The sutras filled the small temple, bounced off the wooden walls, pressed against the thing in the next room. It did not look up. It did not acknowledge me. It continued its work, the way a farmer continues hoeing while a stranger watches from the road. At some point, I cannot say when, I closed my eyes, not from fear, from exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes when the mind has seen something it cannot process and simply stops trying. I chanted until dawn. When light came, I opened my eyes to an empty temple. The corpse was gone. The straw mat was gone. The candle had burned down to a pool of white wax. I stepped outside. The village was gone. Every house, every chimney, the cart, the dog, where 20 buildings had stood the night before. There was only tall grass and moss, covered stones, ancient gravestones half swallowed by earth, their inscriptions worn smooth by centuries of rain. I stood there for a long time. The morning was very still. A bird called somewhere far away. Then I remembered the old monk, the kind face, the threadbare robe, the way he had smiled before he spoke, the way he had warned me, gently, without urgency, to leave before dark. He had known what would come in the night, because he was what would come in the night. A Jikininki, a corpse eating ghost. The texts say they are priests who cared only for the payment funeral rites brought them, who performed sacred duties with hollow hearts, and were reborn into an eternity of consuming the dead, invisible by day, manifest only at night, near temples, near ruins, near the places where they once served. But the texts do not tell you this, that the Jikininki can still be kind, that somewhere inside the hunger, somewhere beneath the compulsion that drives it to tear flesh from the dead in darkness, there is still the memory of a man who once smiled at a weary traveler and told him to leave before it was too late. I walked down the mountain. I did not look back. I have not returned to that province since. But sometimes in the hour before dawn, when the temples are empty and the candles burn low, I think of that old monk, his kind eyes, his gentle warning, and I wonder if he is still there, waiting at the edge of a village that no longer exists, hoping the next traveler will listen. In the year 1164, on the island of Shikoku, a man died in exile. His body was placed in a coffin, and for 20 days it did not decompose. This is not legend. This is recorded in the chronicles of the imperial court. His name was Sutoku, the 75th emperor of Japan, and what was done to him, what was taken from him, would unleash a chain of destruction, so vast it would reshape the nation for centuries. To understand the curse, you must understand the man. Sutoku was born in 1119, the son of Emperor Toba and a woman named Fujiwara no Sheshi. But there was a whisper at court, a whisper that followed Sutoku his entire life, that Toba was not his real father, that Shushi had been the consort of Toba, his grandfather, Emperor Shurakawa, before she was given to Toba, and that the child she bore was Shurakawa, son, not Toba. Tsuba never forgave this. He looked at Sutoku and saw another man, as blood, and when the time came, he made sure Sutoku would pay for a sin that was not his. Sutoku became emperor at the age of 5, a child on the chrysanthemum throne, while real power rested with the retired emperors and the Fujiwara regents, who moved pieces across the board of court politics like a game of Go. He wore the robes, he sat in the hall, he performed the rites. But he decided nothing. For 18 years he was a puppet. Then, in 1141, Toba forced him to abdicate, not in favor of Sutoku, his own son, but in favor of Toba, his preferred heir, a half-brother, a child of Toba, his true bloodline. The throne that Sutoku had held for 18 years was taken from him and given to someone else, son. Sutoku endured. he retreated to his palace. He studied poetry. He composed waka, 31-syllable verses that said everything and nothing. He waited, but in 1156, Toba died, and the fragile balance of power collapsed. What followed was the hatred and rebellion, a brief, brutal civil war fought in the streets of Kyoto. Sutoku gathered allies. He raised soldiers. For the first time in his life, he acted. He fought for the throne that had been stolen from him, for the legacy that had been denied him, for the simple, human need to not be erased. He lost. The battle lasted a single night. By dawn, his forces were scattered, his allies dead or fled, and Sutoku himself was captured. They did not kill him. Death would have been merciful. Instead, they sent him to Sanuki province on the island of Shikoku. Exile, the farthest shore from everything he had ever known. He was 37 years old. He would never leave that island alive. In exile, Sutoku did something extraordinary. He began to copy sacred Buddhist manuscripts, not with ink. The chronicles say he bit off his own tongue, that he dipped his brush in the blood that poured from his mouth and wrote, character by character, sutra after sutra. 5 volumes of sacred text, each stroke rendered in his own blood. He sent them to the capital, an offering, a plea. Accept these manuscripts, and you accept that I was wronged. The court refused them. They would not even open the case. The blood sutras were returned to Shikoku, unopened, unread. Something inside Sutoku broke, or perhaps something finally opened. He is said to have spoken a curse. The words vary by source, but the meaning is the same. I will become a great demon, and I will sink the capital into the sea. He died on the 28th day of the 8th month, 1164, alone, forgotten. 45 years old, his attendants prepared his body for cremation. They placed him in a coffin, and then they waited, because the body would not decay. Days passed, a week, 2 weeks. The corpse of the former emperor lay in its coffin, unchanged, as though death itself could not claim what the living had already destroyed. On the 21st day, they lit the pyre. The chronicles describe what happened next. As the flames consumed the coffin, a storm arrived without warning. Rain fell so hard, it soaked the stones around the pyre. But when the attendants looked at those stones, they were not wet with rain. They were wet with blood, fresh blood seeping from the stone itself. And the ashes of Emperor Sutoku, did not scatter in the wind. They rose. They rose into the sky as a single dark cloud, and that cloud drifted east toward Kyoto, toward the capital that had cast him out. The ashes fell on Kyoto like black snow. What followed reads like a catalogue of divine punishment. Within 2 years, the sitting emperor died. Then the next, then the next. 3 emperors in rapid succession. Each one struck down. Fires swept through Kyoto, not ordinary fires. Conflagrations that consumed entire districts, leaping across rivers, sparing nothing. The imperial palace burned. The great temples burned. The Fujiwara mansions burned. Then came the plague. It moved through the capital like a tide, killing thousands. The court priests performed every ritual they knew. Nothing stopped it. Then the earthquake. The ground opened beneath Kyoto and swallowed whole streets. And then the war. The Genpei War. 1180 to 1185. 5 years of bloodshed that destroyed the imperial system entirely. The Taira and Minamoto clans tore the country apart. And when the fighting ended, the age of the emperors was over. The age of the Shoguns had begun. Everything Sutoku had been denied in life was destroyed in death. The court understood. They built shrines to appease his spirit. They performed ceremonies. They added his name to the rolls of the 3 great vengeful spirits of Japan. Nihon Sendai Entry. Alongside Sugawara, no Mikizain, and Taira no Masakato. But appeasement is an uncertain art. In 2012, a television drama aired in Japan depicting the moment Emperor Sutoku became a nonri, a vengeful spirit. At the exact moment the scene was broadcast, an earthquake struck Tokyo. Coincidence? Of course. But in Kyoto, there are still shrines where monks perform rites for Sutoku, a spirit, not because they believe the curse is active, but because they are not certain it is not. And on quiet nights, if you stand near the old imperial grounds and listen very carefully, some say you can hear it, the sound of a brush moving across paper, one character at a time. It was past midnight when I left the tea house. The streets of Edo were empty, truly empty, the way they only are in the hour between the last drunk stumbling home and the first merchant opening his shutters. No lanterns, no dogs. Just the wooden clack of my geta on the packed earth and the sound of my own breathing. I was not afraid. I walked this route every night, past the dyer's shop with its indigo stained eaves, past the closed gate of the samurai compound, past the well at the corner of 3rd Street, 20 minutes, door to door. I could have walked it blindfolded. I saw the figure about halfway home, standing in the middle of the street, facing away from me. A woman, I thought, small, wearing a pale kimono. Her hair was black and hung loose past her shoulders. She was perfectly still. I slowed, not from fear, from confusion. No one stood in the street at this hour. No one had reason to, and she was not moving, not shifting her weight, not swaying, as though she had been placed there. I crossed to the other side of the street, gave her a wide berth. As I passed, I glanced at her. Just a glance, the way you look at anything unexpected. And she turned around. Where her face should have been, there was nothing. Not a wound, not a mask, not a trick of the darkness. Skin, smooth, unbroken skin, from hairline to chin, from ear to ear. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, a surface as blank and featureless as the back of a porcelain plate. I did not scream, my body simply moved. I ran the way you run in nightmares, where your legs are heavy and the street is longer than it should be, and the sound of your own footsteps is the only proof you are still alive. I turned a corner, then another. My lungs burned. My gaiter slapped against the earth. I did not look back. I did not stop. And then, a man coming toward me from the opposite direction. A merchant, by his clothes, middle-aged, carrying a bundle over one shoulder. A real person. Solid, present. The most beautiful, ordinary thing I had ever seen. I stopped, bent over, hands on my knees. Gasping, "Are you all right?" he asked. His voice was calm, concerned. "Normal." I straightened up. In fragments, a woman in the street. She turned around. No face where her face should have been. There was nothing, just skin. The merchant listened. He nodded slowly, the way someone nods when they are trying to understand something confusing. Then he said, "Oh, you mean like this?" He raised both hands to his face, and he wiped. The way you wipe sleep from your eyes in the morning. His features came away under his palms. Eyes, nose, mouth, smeared off like wet ink, leaving beneath them the same smooth, blank surface. I screamed then. I am not ashamed to say it. The sound tore out of me and bounced off the closed shutters of the sleeping street and came back to me as echo. I ran again. Faster. I don't remember the route. My body knew it. My legs carried me through turns I couldn't have named, past shops and walls and gates, until I saw my own door. I threw it open, slamming it behind me, leaning against it, breathing so hard I could taste blood. My wife was in the main room, sitting by the hearth. She had been waiting up for me. The brazier cast orange light across her face, her familiar, beloved face. The face I had known for 7 years. The face I had woken to every morning. She looked at my heaving chest, at my white hands gripping the doorframe. What happened? She asked. I told her everything. The woman in the street, the blank face, the merchant, the way he had wiped his features away. I told her I had never been so afraid in my life. She listened. She was very still. The firelight flickered across her face. Then she tilted her head, just slightly, the way she always did when she was about to say something she found amusing. "Oh, husband," she said. "You mean like this?" Her face went smooth. The eyes dissolved first, 2 dark pools collapsing inward, filling with skin. Then the nose, flattening, melting into the surface. Then the mouth, the lips pressing together, sealing, vanishing, until where my wife's face had been there was only that same blank, featureless expanse. Smooth as an egg, white as bone. I do not remember what happened after that. I have been told I was found the next morning, sitting in the street outside my house, staring at nothing. My wife was gone. The house was empty. Her belongings were gone, as though she had never lived there at all. The neighbors said I had no wife, that I had lived alone for years, that I must have been dreaming. Perhaps it was a dream, the kind of dream that leaves a residue, a stain on the waking world that no amount of daylight can wash away. But I know what I saw, and I know what the Noppera-bō are. They do not hunt alone. They work in groups, coordinated, deliberate, each one playing a role. The first one frightens you, the second one earns your trust, and the third is the one waiting for you at home. They strip away every safe place. The street is not safe. A stranger is not safe. Your own house is not safe. The face of the person you love most in the world is not safe. Some say the Noppera-bō are shifters, Mujina, badgers who take human form for sport. Others say they are kitsune, fox spirits, testing the boundaries between their world and ours. I do not know what they are. I only know what they do. They show you that every face you trust is only a face because they allow it to be. I have not married again. I do not walk the streets at night. And when I speak to someone, anyone, I watch their face very carefully, for any sign that it might not be real. Sometimes in the right light, I think I can see it. The faintest seam, the thinnest line where the mask meets the skin beneath. But I never ask.